Hello, everyone. Welcome to the news of the week on the Rising Right channel. I'm Grady, and I'm here with my friend Nektarios again. And today we will be talking about Minneapolis and Minnesota and the Somalian takeover of the state and how it's completely changed the city and the state itself. So let's get into it.
I'm excited to announce that I will be supporting Senator Fateh for the mayor of the city of Minneapolis.
Our Congresswoman, who I'm really excited to have her support.
And with that, Congresswoman.
I am the captain now. I take over your good city. I bring in many illegal aliens and I destroy city. It's very convenient. Ilhan Omar talks about how white supremacy is the biggest threat to America. When she supports open borders to flood all these people into the city and the state and all the country to take over. She supports celebrating Somali culture in Minneapolis, but if it was anything about white culture, fire the cannons. That's how it is. So she's gonna support this I'm the captain now guy to take over the city of Somalia and to make it just as trash as Somalia is. And this goes to show the British, right? After World War II, they liberated Libya and they liberated Eritrea. What they didn't liberate was Somalia. They left Somalia to the Italians because no one wants Somalia. We've bombed the country 80 times this year. We're bombing the country and we're still letting these people in. How do you think these people living in the country feel that we're bombing their country? They probably don't like it very much. But that doesn't matter. They're just going to run for mayor and take over, and they'll do whatever they want to the native population there.
And
Whether that is push them out and let in more Somalians, or who knows, start putting up more Muslim prayer call speakers all across the city and even the state.
and you know the failure that is Somalia and a lot of these African states is just proof that we should only have Americans in office because the people in office should represent us as a people. And the thing is when you bring these people over that from a culture that's not as developed as ours and doesn't have the experience in running a country over to the states and start putting them into political offices, it's just going to turn out exactly like their homelands are, and it's gonna ruin our society when we're going to be replaced.
These people have no clue how to run Western civilization.
That's why.
Because they don't even have civilization. They don't know what civilization is. Go to Somalia and tell me how wonderful it is.
The
A
only time,
dystopia.
the only time they ever had any semblance of civilization was when the British were there controlling things.
Or the Italians, yeah.
Yeah, because they have the cultural experience of what it means to be a nation and to run a country, a nation state as we know it today.
And the average IQ of a Somali woman is about 65. That's less than an octopus. So, I mean, I don't think these are the world class special people we need in America. And these people are not going to make America better. They're making it worse. And that's why we see with Somali crime rates in Minneapolis are insanely high. They commit so much crime there. And they are ruining the state, they're ruining the city. In this next video, Ilhan Omar talks about how the idea that America is a white nation that must be preserved is disgusting. Now, we have to say this. If we flooded in 10 million Italians or Brits into Somalia and started overtaking them, would Ilhan Omar love this? And I don't think she would. And because she would say that's racism and oppression and discrimination and disgusting colonization that's going to hurt the people of Somalia. That doesn't matter when it's the other way around. When they're flooding into Minneapolis and starting gang wars and so bad to where the police don't even enter certain areas. If you are a white cop and you go into a Somali neighborhood in Minneapolis, they do not talk to you. They don't talk to you. You have to be a Somalian cop for them to talk to you. So again, these people come in here to our country, expect a bunch in return, a lot of benefits, and then don't assimilate. That's Somalians for you.
And so the idea that this is a white nation that needs to be preserved is a fascinatingly disgusting view because this country is one for the many.
That's stupid. Look, like
Why is it?
I know for a fact that if I said that it's disgusting that Somalia is majority black. It's just disgusting. You know, she would be so pissed. She'd be so pissed at the idea because fundamentally, she understands, at least with their own people, that a nation, by virtue of natural law, is made up of the people that live in it, and it's made up and made for the people who made it.
The native population, the majority. That's how that works, you know? And for her to say it's disgusting, it's like, why is it disgusting? Is it disgusting for the government to hold on to what the founding fathers intended? I mean, has she ever read the Naturalization Act of 1790? Probably not. And I think she should. I think every person who is a foreigner who comes to this country and wants more diversity should read the Naturalization Act, understand that this country was not made as a melting pot. That's actually the complete opposite. If we read what the founding fathers wrote about, especially Alexander Hamilton with the Naturalization Act, it's very clear what they had in plans for America as a country.
Yep. What we have to understand is that diversity is by no means a strength. When you bring all these people in from other nations, what happens is these nations start forming within our broader nation, the nation state that we put together over all these years. For example, in Minneapolis is a big issue, you know, with all these calls for prayers. That's another nation building within our nation, and that's what's going to lead to civil war. It's not, and this time it's not going to be a civil war based on politics. It's going to be a civil war of race, of these nations that have built up alongside each other.
And I mean, it's already a lot of racial violence when it comes to these ICE officers. Like when they see a white ICE officer taking away a Guatemalan, they think it's all about white supremacy. And it's very clear that these cultures of people who come in do not like the native population. And it's going to continue, the violence is going to continue. And I think the Democrat Party is going to be pushing very heavily, and also the people who fund the Democrat Party and the Republican Party, who they are going to be funding this inevitable civil war that's going to go on in America. We're way past due for one. We are way past due for a civil war. That is just, that's right ahead. That's right down the road.
Yeah. I mean, we see the makings of it when these people that come in here don't want to cooperate with the Christian culture we have in place, and fights break out. People are stealing things, raping young children, and the white population won't stand for it, and it causes all these fights you see online. You see these clips of people chimping out all over the internet, you know, and that's a result of people from an inherently non-compatible culture being forced to live with us.
And it's like, I think there's a big difference between native born people. So let's say like there was an immigrant from 4 generations ago.
Yeah.
And I think there's a big difference between them and the people we have now. Because it seems like these people who were, oh, well, my great-grandfather came from wherever, Mexico, have assimilated better, maybe not perfectly, but better than someone like Ilhan Omar, who marries her brother to get in the country legally.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying? So there's a big difference here with who we let in. And that goes back to episode 1 where I talked about if you let in the third world, you get the third world. That's just how this is working, and we're seeing it right here with these Somali takeover of Minneapolis and Minnesota.
Yep, I think it's definitely possible for assimilation to happen over the span of generations, but the fact is we don't have the time to wait generations for these people to assimilate. As a matter of fact, with the numbers, the amount of people that are coming in, there's no need for them to assimilate because they're building these communities amongst their own.
100%. And we have, I would think we've let in 60 million people in the past 50 years into this country. That's completely unsustainable. And it's displaced a lot of the native population, whether that is, African Americans or, the Native Americans. They've probably noticed a change in it too. It's insane how sometimes you go to certain areas of town, it's just like, am I in America or am I in South America or am I in Somalia? You can never tell where you are anymore when you're in America.
Yeah, and that's part of the larger globalist ploy, right? Is that you flood every country with so many immigrants, all these cultures mesh together and kind of become this gray blob of a mutual economy, right? And in this way, the globalists have this greater control over you, because now it doesn't matter where you live. You can live in the Middle East, you can live in Berlin, you can live in New York, and it's all the same shit to you. You have no connection to your homeland anymore. You have no reason to defend it.
Yeah, great point. All right, so on the topic of Minneapolis, let's go to the crime rates, and we see with northwest Minneapolis and then south Minneapolis, it is extremely, or I guess the center of Minneapolis, it's extremely dangerous. And on this chart below, right here, you can see if it's extremely light, then it's safe. If it's extremely dark, it's dangerous. So we see with these areas over here that it's extremely dangerous. And over here, it's extremely dangerous. Down here, it seems pretty safe. But we also can go to the diversity of Minneapolis on a chart and see that the most diverse areas are the most dangerous. And I wish they were more specific with this, because I truly believe that the Somalians make up the majority of the crime in these areas because of what we've heard from local PD and local documentaries that have been made on Minneapolis when it comes to crime and how the police is working, how these Somalian gangs are taking over the city. So when we see these, this chart is that the green areas and the yellow areas represent, green represents black, orange represents, or yellow represents Hispanic, red represents Asian, and blue represents white. What we see with these is that all this little melting pot right here of diversity is extremely dangerous.
Yep.
When we go back here, it matches up very, very well.
And editor me will put that map next to it so you can see them both side by side.
All right, good. And then when we have down here in Phillips, we can go here, and it's also pretty dangerous in this area, like especially over here, like right here where it says Phillips, West Phillips, right here, very dangerous. And I would still blame this on the Somali influx, the influx of Somalians into the city.
And I believe
because if you look at
you researched this beforehand, right? That there is a significant portion of these black communities are Somalians.
Yes, they flood to the north, and it's, I don't know why. You see it with Sweden too. They just flood to the north. I don't get it, but they flood to this area of the north, and they also sit in the south area. And I think what's going on is, you see on here, there's a split. I think what's going on is this south is ran by Somalians, and they're going to war with the north, who are also ran by Somalians, and that's where the gang war is going on. But it's also taking war on these inner cities, on these streets. Like, it's literally by street. If you're from this street, we're at war. And that's why, I mean, Minnesota used to be one of the safest states in the country. It was a great place, and now it's awful. And if you look at charts of crime throughout the years, you can see in the past 4 years, it's like a mountain. It just goes straight up. And it doesn't seem to stop anytime soon, because Somalians are still moving to Minnesota.
I mean, I'll also point out, the reason they're probably outside the center is because they come here with a lot less money. But the thing is they're going to come here, they're not going to work, because the way of life here, even with nothing, is way better than what they had at home. So there's no reason for them to work. Those areas are never going to develop. They're going to remain slums for the duration that they're there.
Well, they probably weren't slums before until a certain type of people moved in. And this we see it not only with Somalians. So I'm not just trying to say it's only Somalians who are making the country bad. I mean, if you look at these major cities, a lot of cultures that do not align with Western values invade these cities, and it makes it 1,000 times worse than what it was before.
Right.
And that's going to continue until we completely shut down our borders. No more legal immigration. And obviously no more legal immigration, but no more legal immigration. We're full. Send at least 50 million people.
Yeah.
We need to get 50 million people out the country. There's too much. We're tearing down too much of our forests. Soon, America's just going to be one giant suburban area, or a slum like Minneapolis. And we see, like, St. Louis Park, right? What a great place to be. Golden Valley. And then you go Crystal, right? All these awesome names. And then you go this way, and it just gets worse. We'll talk about St. Louis. There is nothing freaking holy about these areas, I'll tell you that. And I wouldn't go there if someone paid me $1 million.
Yep.
You walk out there with your head cut off, and you're probably swinging from a light pole by your feet.
Okay. So the Supreme Court signals it's poised to strike down race-based VRA congressional districts that heavily favor Democrats. If you don't know what VRA stands for, that is the Voting Rights Act. And this is according to the New York Times, it seems. The net swing could be Republicans plus 24 congressional districts in the U.S. House of Representatives. The court's conservative justices have long pointed to what they have viewed as tension between the Voting Rights Act's goals of protecting minority voting rights and a colorblind conception in the 14th Amendment's Equal Protection Clause, which requires that the law treat everyone equally. To break this down a little bit, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it essentially says that there can't be any laws in place that somehow disproportionately affect the representation of minorities in government, which this is why it's strange, right? Because when you have these minority groups with equal representation to the minorities, then this is unfair. This is unfair. The population itself should be, like as a whole, should be voting. One vote per person, right? And of the issue here, as far as I understand, is that's the reason why you're having these giant Democratic districts, is because these minorities tend to vote Democratic, and they're getting a higher representation than they ought to. This also comes up as an issue with voting IDs, right? Because if we institute a law saying, hey, we're requiring you to bring your voting ID to vote, it's statistically speaking, minorities and blacks in particular don't tend to get voting IDs. So it can be claimed, okay, this is disproportionately affecting the black people. We can't have this law in place anymore. You have any thoughts on this, Andrew?
I think some people may say it's bad for the black community, but I think it's actually great for them, because the thing of saying, "Oh, don't worry about getting your voter ID. Don't worry about it," is crap. And it's like, no, these people should be motivated to get more into their local elections and obviously the national elections. They should be willing to put in the work to vote. These people, all right, they decide who's president and who's their representatives and senators, but they're too lazy to get a voter ID. No one should be able to vote if they're too lazy to get their voter ID. End of story. That's just how it should be. I mean, unless I'm the crazy one here.
Yeah, no. And the other thing is I'm also very much in favor, which there are other amendments in place. I believe it's the 25th and the 14th. Like, I'm a big believer in, if you vote, you should own property. You should have a stake in the country. Like, you should own a piece of it. Because otherwise, if you're not living like an American, then you shouldn't have the right to have a say on what's happening in American politics. It's also, for example, why I think polling tax is a good idea. Because I believe that people that work should be the ones that are allowed to vote. The people who participate in the American way of life and the American culture should be the ones deciding our legislation. And I think that this is a step in the right direction that can help us bring those laws into place, because they would disproportionately affect minorities. And while that's the case, it's still fair, because they have to abide by the same laws we do, you know? Mm-hmm. It just so happens that that population doesn't tend to want to follow those laws or work to have the ability to follow those laws just as much as we do. And I think that this is a step in the right direction for that, although those two other amendments I mentioned are still an obstacle.
And I don't even know if it's about they don't want to follow the law. I think it's just they've been told to. It's like they've never been told, hey, go get your voter ID. It's like, oh, well, my dad, who might not even be present, shows up and just says, all right, let's go vote. Never talks about a voter ID. Never talks about the process of voting. And all he knows, or all she knows, is go to your local church or community center and just cast your vote. So I think it needs to be a thing of every community in America needs to be very clear with their kids. This is how you get your voter ID set up. This is the process. I don't know why we have to hold hands so much.
Yeah.
All the time with like this whole country has turned into just holding hands. Let's hold your hands and walk you through this. This is how you breathe. You go, that's how you do that. Okay, now follow after me. Constantly. Why can't people be more independent and learn this stuff? It's because they have an awful family or a father figure or an awful mother, or neither one of them could be present. They could have been just left to the dogs.
Yeah, no, that could very well be the case. There's a lot of societal impacts, especially within the minority communities, that I think need to be addressed. It's an unfortunate circumstance. Okay, and over here we see how this redistricting can affect votes in political parties. Now, you see in the left side, which is what this system in place currently looks like, because of the Voting Rights Act of 1965, you have these communities that are voting very predominantly blue, and that's because the redistricting is set up in such a way that these minority populations, which tend to vote Democrat, have more of have an equal say to the white populations, despite being the minority, meaning that it's not one person per vote. It's actually, I think, a violation of the 14th Amendment that says that voting can't be discriminated based on race. And on the right side is the proposed outcome of what would happen when this is repealed, which will mean a lot more Republican representation.
Which is overall, even though I'm not a Republican, I think most of these Republicans who are going to be running in these seats are going to be bought out by AIPAC quicker than we can take a breath. But look over here. I didn't know this was how the map was set up. All of West Mississippi is just in one box, which is kind of crazy. Mm-hmm. And obviously, you can make the argument of population density. Well, I don't think that's a good enough argument. I think that should at least be 2.
Yeah.
And over here, it seems like it will be 2 right here. 1, 2.
Yeah, see, that's the thing that you just pointed out, is that it's not based off population density. It's based off of where people of a certain race live, and giving them these large amount of points that make them quote-unquote equally represented, even though it just means that they get more power per vote than we do.
And okay, this is 1, but I can't tell because I can't tell if this is 1 seat or 2. But if this is 1 seat that just runs that far,
yeah, this is redistricting maps are so stupid. Like, you see all these weird shapes, and the reason for that is because they want to give these people more power per vote. A violation of our 14th Amendment.
Like, this is just a weird, oddly shaped chunk. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
In this next clip, it comes from the Supreme Court Justice Ketanji. I don't know how to say her name.
Something like that.
Anyway, she makes the argument that the Voting Rights Act is the same as the Americans with Disabilities Act because black people are disabled and can't do things on their own, apparently. So let's listen to this and let's hear her out.
I guess I'm thinking of the fact that remedial action, absent discriminatory intent, is really not a new idea in the civil rights laws. And my kind of paradigmatic example of this is something like the ADA. Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act against the backdrop of a world that was generally not accessible to people with disabilities. And so it was discriminatory in effect because these folks were not able to access these buildings. And it didn't matter whether the person who built the building or the person who owned the building intended for them to be exclusionary. That's irrelevant. Congress said the facilities have to be made equally open to people with disabilities if readily possible. I guess I don't understand why that's not what's happening here. The idea in Section 2 is that we are responding to current day manifestations of past and present decisions that disadvantage minorities and make it so that they don't have equal access to the voting system, right? They're disabled. In fact, we use the word disable in Milligan. We say that's a way in which you see that these processes are not equally open.
We also have to think, if we're just gonna keep sitting here like this woman and tell black people and brown people, you're a victim in America, you're a victim, we're gonna dump $1 trillion into your community and nothing's gonna change because we're making you independent on us. You're a victim, you're a victim. Nothing's going to change at all. And they will end up becoming disabled because we are going to make them disabled. We already have in many ways, because we just make them feel like they're a victim all the time. We tell them they're a victim over and over and over. And what's it do for them? What's it do?
Yeah.
And it's making the communities worse. And they would be much better if they were more independent and stop dumping money into black communities. We see it when the war on drugs, we dumped money into the war on drugs, and drug rates and drug use went way up. The war on terrorism, right? The war on terrorism skyrocketed. We need to stop dumping money into it.
Even if you make the argument of, oh, well, this was a mistake in her wording, the idea that these laws, these voting laws, would would be unfair to the minority population is just outlandish. Okay, because we have to follow the exact same laws. They have just as much capability, just as much of the freedoms we do, and it's up to them to utilize those to go out and vote.
Of course, and I think the problem is with people like this is when they sit there and say, you're a victim. And you know who's making you a victim? You know who's really having their foot on your neck? It's Whitey Republican over there. It's that guy. Of course they're going to keep voting for the Democrats. We're going to keep dumping money into the communities. It doesn't do anything for them. It keeps destroying the black community because the black community has been told by for decades that they are being held down by white people when blacks have such potential in America that they can do wonderful things.
We had a black president.
As long as the Zionists are going to hold them down. Yeah, exactly. We had a black president. What happened to that?
No, as a matter of fact, they get more privileges than we do because of this affirmative action bullshit and companies hiring to create equal demographics.
So where are we all just disabled here?
Yeah,
we're all disabled. So we had a black president, black woman Supreme Court, but they're just disabled.
Yeah,
they're just.
I think she's clearly disabled. She can't think straight.
Yeah, she's the disabled one. Let's get her out and replace her with someone who actually has a brain. And by when I say get, I mean getting her like outvoted. No violence, obviously. But that's all I gotta say on this topic.
Yep.
Thank you all for watching and coming back to the Rising Right channel. We're going to try and do this every week now, at least every Wednesday, to where we do a weekly news update on what big is going on nationwide. I'm Grady, and my friend Nektarios here, and we will all see you in the next episode.